Hey guys, tonight we slip behind the soot-smudged glass of a Victorian tailor shop, deep in the belly of London, where gas lamps sputter, cobblestones sweat, and the fog never truly leaves. But you're not the customer. You're not even the tailor. You're the mannequin, life-sized, wax-bodied, wooden-soled, poured into existence in a cramped back room of a waxwork studio where the air smells like boiling resin and burnt toast. The mold is hot, the air sticky, and your creator, Mr. Blagden, whistles something off-key about sausages. He pours you slowly. You're not alone. 4 other mannequins dry around you, stiff and blank-eyed, like prisoners in mid-thought. One has an ear that melted slightly. Another has a mustache, painted with clear affection. You're the clean one. A crisp chin, noble brows, and a suspiciously well-defined waist. Mr. Blagden says you're for the premium client, then pats your head like a dog. So your journey begins. You're crated in straw, rolled out on a trolley, and rattled down gas lane toward your new home. Leighton and Figg's tailor and haberdasher. The sign above the door creaks like it's trying to leave. Inside, it smells of starch, cedarwood, and men's disappointment. A wiry man in pince-nez spectacles, Mr. Figg, squints at you. Looks expensive, he mutters. Put him in the navy wool. They dress you. Slowly, carefully. First, a high-collared shirt, its buttons tighter than a banker's smile. Then a double-breasted frock coat with lapels like folded toast. A pocket watch chain dangles against your torso. It ticks, but there's no watch. Just the chain, for effect. And then, at last, you're placed in the front window, facing the world. You see London through a fogged pane. Hansom cabs, women with parasols, boys chasing each other through puddles. The fog licks the glass like a curious dog. You can't move, but you can see. And oh, what a thing that is. By day, customers come and go. Some pause in front of you, tilting their heads, wondering aloud if your coat would suit Uncle Bernard. By night, the gaslights outside flicker. The tailor shop closes. Keys turn, and the street falls into silence. Well, almost silence. The mannequins whisper. Not with mouths, of course, but with presence. You don't hear words. You feel vibrations. The suit beside you, a female torso wearing a corset for display, seems to hum. She's been here longer. She's seen floods, fashions, fires. She hums a lot about floods. Sometimes the child-sized mannequin in the back corner squeaks. You hope it's his base on the wood, and not the thing under his foot that's still wriggling. The first night, a rat climbs into your coat pocket and falls asleep. You feel the tiny weight shift with its breathing. It snores. You're startled at first, then charmed. You name it Buttons. It never stays long. Some nights, the gaslight outside your window sputters and goes out entirely. When that happens, you feel something deeper than dark. A city exhale. The kind of quiet that makes wax feel like flesh. That's when you start to hear more. A constable coughs down the block. A couple fights across the alley. But in soft, tired voices, and somewhere, always somewhere, a harmonica plays something slow and full of yearning. You'll never know who, but it never misses a night. Mr. Layton, the senior tailor, talks in his sleep. He naps in the back room with a newspaper over his face. One night, he whispers, "Velvet, too bold. Her hands too cold." You absorb it. You absorb everything. The arguments, the fittings, the nervous grooms with pit stains and too small shoes, the ladies who drop off handkerchiefs for embroidery, and the occasional gentleman who asks if the dummies are for sale. You are not for sale. You are for standing and watching and waiting, and sometimes listening to the mice below the floorboards rehearse what you're convinced is amateur opera. The second week, something changes. Your right sleeve begins to itch. Not truly. Wax doesn't itch. But that's the only word your stiff, silent mind can use. It's buttons again. The rat. He's stuffed a piece of biscuit crust into your cuff, and now he's burrowed inside to eat it in peace. You respect the hustle. Across the street, the bakery keeps odd hours. Sometimes, just before sunrise, flour-dusted man opens the shutters and tosses stale bread to the pigeons. You watch one bird try to eat a cravat someone dropped. The cravat wins. Inside the shop, Fig complains about taxes. He always complains about taxes. He paces, mutters about tariffs and French imports, and once calls Queen Victoria a well-dressed wall of rules. Then he apologizes aloud, as if the coat you're wearing might report him. At night, the mannequins settle. It's the corset form that whispers first, in that barely there vibration you now know to feel for. She hums the same tune nightly, soft, looped, endless. You're starting to suspect it was a lullaby, something she once heard sung from the back room when the seamstresses worked late into winter. The child mannequin, the one with the cracked base, now leans slightly. Someone propped a spool of thread beneath his foot to steady him. He likes this. You can feel his smug little presence. You think he might believe he's growing. Meanwhile, your pocket watch chain finally falls off. A tailor retrieves it. The next day curses whoever didn't fasten it properly, then sighs and replaces it with a button. You are downgraded. No one says it, but you feel it. Mr. Layton says, "He's getting tired." Fig replies, "He's wax. He can't get tired." Oh, but you can. Because standing isn't the same as resting. You've watched a dozen customers come in and out this week. One, a poet with a crooked tie, talked about revolutions and the power of cufflinks. Another, a shoemaker's apprentice, whispered sorry to you while waiting to be measured because he thought you looked lonely. He wasn't wrong. You've begun to track time, not by hours, but by the smell of fabric samples. Morning smells like wool and chalk. Evening is starch and warm lamp oil. Night? Night smells like you. Dust, wax, and time. Sometimes a cat slips through the back door. You never see it. But the corset mannequin always grows still when it arrives, and you hear a faint jingling sound, like a bell, very far away. The cat never meows. It just inspects, moves like mist, probably has opinions about the tailoring. The mannequins grow quieter over time. Their hums fade, replaced by silence and weight. You're not sure if they're sleeping or surrendering, but you still listen, still hold your pose. And then, one night, the gaslight flickers again. Only this time, it doesn't return. Instead, Someone opens the door. Keys don't jingle. No bell rings, just a cold draft. Boots on wood, and a long pause. You feel strangely watched, not by the street, but from inside. Whoever it is, they don't move toward the register. They don't steal. They just look, and then they say softly, "You remind me of my father." You don't breathe. You never have. But something in that moment shifts, because the voice is young, nervous, grieving. They leave something behind, a scarf, folded, tucked gently into your coat pocket. Not stolen, a gift. Buttons later. Choose on it anyway. You don't mind. It still smells like lavender. The scarf lingers. For days, no one notices it. It stays right there, gently tucked in your pocket, soft against the curve of your coat lining. It smells of lavender and candle smoke, like someone kind once stood very still in a quiet room. You like it. Buttons likes it too. He's tried to nest in it twice. You've never had a gift before? Tailors give you things, sure. Hats, gloves, the occasional flower pinned in your lapel during the spring window displays. But those aren't really yours. They're borrowed pieces of the season. But the scarf? The scarf feels like a whisper someone left behind on purpose. By the end of the week, Fig notices. "Where'd this come from?" he mutters, pulling it halfway out. He sniffs it, frowns, and tucks it right back in. "Customers are getting too familiar," he grumbles. But he leaves it, and you're grateful. Not that you can say anything, or smile, or lean back slightly in relief. But in your stillness, something warms, and you carry that warmth with you through the coldest February you've ever known. That February, the shop's heater breaks, the nights grow teeth. The glass panes develop patterns, like frozen ferns. Fig comes in each morning with red cheeks and cracked lips. Leighton wraps his fingers in cloth just to thread a needle. You, of course, don't move. But Wax remembers, cold. You feel your body grow denser, like a frozen candle, waiting for the match. The corset mannequin cracks slightly at her base. The child mannequin leans even more dramatically, now balanced on 3 spools and a thimble. He's turning into a performance piece. At night, the gaslights barely hold. Sometimes the city disappears entirely in the frost. No horses clop by. No arguments drift from the upper floors. Only the wind and the faint sound of glass creaking against wood. And Buttons, still loyal, still cold. You're fairly certain he's been wearing a stolen glove. Eventually, Leighton begins placing warm bricks in the corners of the shop at night. "One of these days, I'll wake up an icicle," he mutters. He doesn't realize you already have. Then one night, the fog returns. Not gently, but like a guest angry to have been forgotten. It pushes against the window in thick waves, frosting over. Your view of the street, the whole world disappears, and you're left in a blur of gaslight and gray. And that's when the knock happens. 3 gentle taps on the glass. Impossible, of course. No one's out in this weather. Fig's already home. Leighton's dozing in, the back with a shawl over his knees. Buttons is snoring in your left boot. You stare forward. Nothing there. Then, a shape, not a person, just a shadow, low to the ground, barely tall enough to meet your chest. It lingers, then fades. You might be imagining things, but the corset mannequin hums slightly higher that night. She felt it too. By morning, the fog is gone, and the glass bears 3 faint smudges right at the level of a child's face. City kids, Fig mutters. You think otherwise, because the child mannequin is facing you now, and he never did before. You're not alone, not really. And as the days begin to stretch, again, longer light, less frost, you feel something else. Change. You don't know when or how, but you feel it in the wax, in the threads of your coat, in the lavender scarf that still smells faintly of someone else's memory. Change is coming, and it's wearing gloves. Change arrives with a trunk, a real one, wooden, brass-cornered, scuffed from 100 railway platforms. It thuds onto the shop floor one windy Tuesday afternoon, carried in by a man with hair too tidy to trust. He introduces himself as Mr. Bendlow, traveling style consultant. He says it with a flourish, like he's declaring war. Leighton blinks. Fig nearly chokes on his biscuit. You can't react, obviously, but you feel the air shift. This man has opinions. He opens the trunk like a magician revealing a disappearing elephant. Inside, bolts of fabric so bright they nearly hum. Peacock blue, plum, something he calls dangerous mustard. There are pocket squares with embroidery of birds, cravats with poetry printed in Latin. One vest appears to have tiny maps sewn into it. You feel immediate dread, and also a little bit of hope, because Benlow walks straight up to you and says, "This fellow, he wants to wear velvet. I can feel it." Fig says, "You've always been the classic wool model." Benlow taps your cheek. He's been bored for 20 years. You nearly blush. That evening, the shop stays open late. Leighton works quietly, trying not to offend the fabrics. Fig mutters insults like overdone and dandy bait. Bendlow swans through the bolts of cloth, measuring you with his eyes, his fingers, his entire soul. At midnight, you're redressed. A plum velvet waistcoat, starched cuffs, and a green cravat with a single embroidered bee. You look ridiculous, but also radiant. Buttons approves. He naps in your breast pocket, and the corset mannequin hums a new note. Sharp, amused, approving. The next morning, passers-by pause longer. At the window, some smile. One woman mouths the word bold. You're suddenly an object of interest again. It feels strange, like being awake after a long warm nap. Of course, not everyone is pleased. A well-to-do regular scoffs and walks past. A child points and says, "Why is he dressed like fruit?" And one old man raps the window and shakes his head slowly, as if you've personally disappointed England. But still, you remain bright, confident, slightly absurd, and somehow more alive than you felt in years. That night, Buttons brings you a gift. A button, not stolen, found. He drops it in your hand, curls up in your collar, and snores with one foot twitching. You let it rest there. Later, Fig argues with Leighton about rebranding. Leighton says, "He looks like a velvet weasel." Fig says, "He looks like someone who matters again." You don't know which is better. All you know is that under gaslight and fog, reflected in the faint shimmer of the shop's glass, you catch a glimpse of your new silhouette. And for the first time in decades, you think, "I could get used to this." Change, once it finds you, doesn't just settle in. It throws open every door, flings scarves over every lampshade, and decides nothing is sacred. Mr. Benlow returns 2 days later with a sketch pad and something he calls ambition. He stands in front of you for half an hour, sketching dramatically, pausing only to chew the end of his pencil and mutter things like revolution in lapels. And what if trousers whispered? Fig is horrified. Leighton is resigned. You are fascinated, because suddenly you're not just a mannequin anymore. You're a canvas. Your velvet vest is replaced by a striped one with embroidery shaped like constellations. Benlow mutters something about mapping the future through fashion. Then comes the hat. It is tall. It is orange. It has a feather in it, possibly from a bird that once insulted royalty and paid dearly. You're not sure how to feel, but Buttons likes the feather. He chews it like a cigar and looks proud. Outside, people start lingering, not just glancing, but truly lingering. Some even point. One woman sketches you. A young man brings his friend back the next day, just to look. See? He whispers. I told you he was real. You're not, of course, but you are more than you were. At night, the corset mannequin begins a new hum. It's jazzy. Somehow, the child mannequin tips his head forward in admiration, or maybe just gravity. He's now propped up by a spool tower of dangerous height. You're beginning to suspect he's trying to reach eye level with you. But amidst the change, the old rhythms continue. Leighton still naps in the back, murmuring memories into newspapers. Fig still polishes the counter like he's scrubbing away regret. And you, still standing, start to hear stories. Because people talk when they think no one's listening, especially to a mannequin. One night, a delivery boy leans in close and whispers a secret to you. You don't catch all of it, just the words, I saw her again, and don't tell Mum. The next night, he returns and grins at you like you've kept his confidence. You have. Another evening, a young woman touches your sleeve, just barely. She lingers, then quietly says, I wish I could dress like you. You wish she could too. Even Buttons has changed. He now has a tiny nest in the crook of your arm, fashioned from scraps of wool, 2 pins, and the lining of an abandoned glove. He snores with authority now, like he owns shares in the shop, and yet something tugs at your wax bones. The feeling is hard to name, a shift deep below the paint and polish. You're being noticed, really noticed, and that means you might be missed, eventually, which means someone might decide you don't belong anymore, or worse, that you do, permanently. You've seen what happens to old mannequins. They disappear into basements, or get melted down to become candle molds and novelty boots. You're not ready for that, not anymore, because in your stillness, you've found a kind of purpose. You reflect, you absorb, you remind people of something bold, or safe, or possible. You're no longer just wax and wood. You're a mirror, a very well-dressed mirror, with a rat roommate, and a deep distrust of orange feathers. And every night, under flickering gaslight, you think, I hope someone remembers me. You don't expect it to be a Wednesday, but most strange things happen on Wednesdays. The day begins quietly, Gray sky, low fog, rain that taps the glass like it's testing your patience. Fig arrives first, muttering about his knees. Leighton follows with a loaf of bread under one arm and a newspaper under the other. Both already damp. Mr. Benlow is late. Unusual. By midday, even Buttons seems unsettled. He darts back and forth between your pockets, tail twitching like he knows something's off. He chews a piece of twine. You try not to panic. Then she walks in. Not Benlow. Someone new. She's tall, cloaked in green velvet, and wears gloves stitched with gold thread. Her boots are sharp. Her voice, when she speaks, sounds like library dust and opera. This is him, she says, pointing straight at you. Leighton drops his bread. Fig stiffens. Yes, madam. That's the mannequin. She circles you slowly. You've been circled before. Tailors checking posture, seamstresses adjusting drape. But this is different. She looks like she's reading you, or challenging you to a duel. You've stirred up the street, she murmurs. My clients now ask for the mannequin cut, and I don't like sharing trends. Fig tries to interrupt, but she raises a gloved finger. Then she leans in, close enough to smell like bergamot and danger, and says very softly, You're becoming fashion. Be careful. Then she walks out, cloak swirling like a storm cloud. Leighton exhales like he'd been holding his breath since she entered. That was Lady Evangeline Blight, he whispers. She's a legend, used to design military coats and mourning veils. You don't know what to do with that information, but you feel it settle into your wax, heavy and cold. That night, the mannequins hum in uneasy harmony. The corset mannequin's tune has flattened. Lower, slower. The child mannequin tilts again. His spool tower is leaning dangerously. You wonder if he heard her. You definitely did, because the next day, change comes again, but not the exciting, scarf-gifted, feather-wearing kind. This time, it's a man with a clipboard. He's not dressed badly, gray vest, shiny shoes, but he smells like logistics, like the kind of person who asks where the receipts are before even saying hello. He eyes you, takes notes, and then says, Bit too flamboyant, isn't he? Flamboyant? You've never been called that. Fig frowns. Leighton protests. Buttons bites his shoelace. But the man shrugs. Doesn't fit the new branding. We're pivoting to rustic tweed. You feel the words, like a cold draft through your seams. Tweed, not velvet, not stars, just tweed. As he walks out, he adds, We'll send the removal lads next week. Keep the waistcoat, though. Some charity might want it. You're being replaced, unmade. After all this time, after the scarf, the sketches, the whispers, the glances, you're being returned to silence. That night, the corset mannequin doesn't hum at all. Even Buttons sleeps curled, up and tight, as if he's preparing to travel. You don't. You stand, just like always. But your shadow in the glass has shrunk, and the scarf in your pocket feels more like an anchor than a gift. You remember what Lady Evangeline said. You're becoming fashion, and fashion doesn't sleep. It moves, too fast for wax to keep up. Still, something in you sharpens. You're not done yet, not while people still stop to look, Not while one scarf still smells like lavender. Not while Buttons still calls you home. The week before, your removal is strange. Everyone's pretending it isn't happening. Fig says nothing about it directly, though he starts polishing your shoes more often, like you're about to be shipped off to a job interview you didn't apply for. Leighton hums while he works now, off-key, nervous, loud enough to drown out silence, and Benlow doesn't come back. You wonder if he knows. You wonder if he left on purpose. But Buttons stays. He builds an even fluffier nest in your coat pocket. Extra scraps, a length of ribbon, what might be part of Fig's mustache trimmings. He curls up with one paw over his face and snores like it's a protest. The corset mannequin finally breaks her silence. Late one night, long after the last candle sputters out, she hums, not the lullaby, not the jazzy improv from your velvet days, something new, a song with an edge, sorrowful, maybe, brave. You try to hum it back, but of course you can't. Still, she knows you're listening. Everyone does now. Even the street seems to lean in. Foot traffic increases. People pause longer. Some even place their hands on the glass, as though checking for heat. A painter sketches you at twilight. A boy in uniform salutes you before school. One woman mouths, "You're still here," like you're an old friend from a dream. And then, 3 days before your scheduled exit, something strange happens. Someone brings a letter, folded cream paper, gold ink. It's addressed to the gentleman in the window. Fig opens it with a frown, reads it once, and reads it again. Then he sets it down and leaves it on the counter. He doesn't explain, but that night he oils your joints. "Just in case," he mutters. "You don't need it," but you let him. The next morning, a crowd gathers, not a large one, not loud, but steady. They line the pavement across the street, scarves wrapped tight, tea in paper cups. They point, they smile, they wait. Someone starts sketching again. Someone else starts crying. Leighton finally says it. They're not here for clothes anymore. They're here for you. And for the first time since that scarf was tucked into your coat, you feel taller. The clipboard man returns. This time with 2 men in caps and a cart. But when they try to move you, something strange happens. A wheel breaks. The base catches. Your coat snags on a peg. One man swears. Another trips over Buttons, who, quite heroically, latches onto his boot and refuses to unclamp his jaw. Eventually, Fig intervenes. "Maybe," he says slowly, "maybe we rethink the pivot." The clipboard man snorts, but then he sees the crowd. The woman mouthing, "You're still here." The boy in uniform saluting again. And something, just something, softens. He doesn't apologize. He just shrugs and mutters, "I'll tell marketing, your legacy inventory," then leaves. You're not sure what that means. But no one tries to move you again. That night, Leighton raises a teacup toward you. "To the wax lad," he says. "To the one who refused to melt." And the mannequins hum. Not one at a time, all together. Now, low, sure, beautiful. You don't know what tomorrow holds. But tonight, you're seen. It starts with the photograph, not taken by a professional, just a girl with red mittens and a Polaroid. She presses the camera against the glass and clicks. Flash. Then she pins the picture to the nearby post box with a clothespin, like she's offering a prayer. On it, she's written 3 words. He still stands. By the end of the week, there are dozens of them. Some Polaroids, some hand-drawn, some just notes, crumpled receipts, pages torn from books, shopping lists with little hearts beside your name. You didn't know you had a name. Apparently, you do now. Most of the notes say it. Thank you, mister. Others get creative. The Velvet Ghost. Sir Buttoncoat. Captain Still. Buttons thinks they're all about him. You let him believe it. Meanwhile, Fig is flustered. Every morning he removes the notes, grumbling about clutter. Every afternoon, he stops removing them. By Friday, he's built a small display stand next to the front window. Public Appreciation Archive, he mutters, tacking up drawings with bits of spare twine. Leighton starts brewing extra tea and leaving it by the window for visitors. He swears it helps keep the glass from fogging, but you know it's a gift. And gifts mean something. Even the corset mannequin nods in approval now and then. She started humming duets with the child mannequin, who finally toppled his tower of spools and is now reclining dramatically on a folded bolt of linen like a sleepy poet. You've never felt more surrounded by life or by love, but it doesn't last. It never does, because every good myth earns a twist. This one comes in the form of a headline. You don't read the newspaper, obviously, but Leighton does, and he drops his cup the second he sees it. New department store to open on Pennycroft Street, he reads aloud. Buttons freezes, halfway through a stolen biscuit. The corset mannequin's hum falters. You don't need ears to feel it. The shift in air, the prickling unease. The new store will have 10 mannequins. 10, all modern, all plastic, all posable. You, of course, are not. You're wax and wire and a soul stitched together by silence. And in this new world, that may not be enough. The announcement triggers a slow, creeping change. Fewer customers trickle in. More whisper outside than come through the door. Bendlow doesn't return. The girl with the Polaroid comes by one more time, pressing her forehead to the glass before disappearing into the fog. Even Buttons is quieter now. He watches the door. You do too. But you don't move. You can't move. So you do what you've always done. You stand and hope someone sees you, because sometimes standing is resistance. Sometimes wax is stronger than plastic. Sometimes the thing that doesn't bend becomes a monument. And somewhere, just outside the frame, a child whispers, "Don't worry, he's always there." Winter slips in like an afterthought. First with fog that clings to windows like breath, then frost that outlines the glass in delicate lace, making your silhouette appear ghostly, romantic even. Leighton starts arriving later, wrapped in too many scarves, while Fig insists the cold sharpens his tailoring skills. You, however, wear the season like a cape. Your coat's velvet catches light like frost itself. Your cravat holds its crispness, though the green has dulled a little, taking on a mossy hue. Buttons grows fluffier, possibly out of protest. The corset mannequin begins humming carols in a slightly menacing key. And outside, despite the chill, your small fan club doesn't vanish. Some leave mittens on the ledge. One child balances a snowball on your shoulder and declares it Knighted Sir Frostington. You accept the title in silence. A woman knits a scarf with your face on it. You try not to be vain, but you are very proud. Then, just as the days get shortest, just when the gaslights seem weakest, it happens. An envelope, handwritten, slid under the door, addressed to the gentleman in the window. Again, Leighton opens it slowly, as if it might explode or sing. Inside is a single sheet. On it, 5 words. Would he like to travel? It's unsigned. No return address. No explanation. Just an invitation. Leighton shows it to Fig. Fig reads it twice, squints at you, then mutters, Travel? What? In a trunk again? He's not a magician's rabbit. But Leighton smiles. Maybe, he says softly. Maybe they mean something better. You don't know what better means. Not really. You've never moved more than a foot in any direction. Your world has been spools and scarves and fogged windows for decades. But still, travel. The word sings a little. That night, Buttons curls beside your ear. He whispers, yes, whispers. Do we go? You don't answer, but your silence is louder than a scream. In the morning, there's another note. This one says, we'll collect him in spring, and suddenly, winter feels like a countdown, not a sentence, a runway, a waiting room for possibility. The mannequins don't speak of it directly, but the corset mannequin hums lighter melodies. The child mannequin builds a tower again, this time out of empty spools and imagination. Even Fig stops muttering about plastic mannequins. He sews you a new cravat. It's gold with stars. Buttons adds a peanut to his nest. Preparation, he calls it. For what? You don't know. But the truth is, you're scared. Spring feels like a promise, and promises are dangerous things when you're made of wax. But still, you wait, and for the first time in your long, long life, you hope spring arrives the way most important things do, quietly, while no one's looking. One day the rain has a scent to it, the kind that smells like something starting. Then a streak of sunlight warms your left cheek. Well, wax cheek. You don't technically feel it, but you notice it. And noticing is its own form of sensation when you've been standing still for this long. Outside, daffodils struggle through the cracks in the cobblestones. Inside, the tailor shop feels lighter, brighter, hopeful in that hesitant, almost suspicious way hope often is. Leighton starts leaving the door open on mild afternoons. He calls it ventilation, but you know better. He wants people to see you again, wants the world to remember that you're still here, still standing. Buttons is giddy. He's reorganized his nest 4 times in anticipation of the journey. He insists on referring to it that way, capital letters included. The corset mannequin has resumed humming with great flourish. One tune features dramatic pauses. Another ends in a sound suspiciously like a sneeze. She might be inventing genres. Even Fig softens. He dusts you twice as often, and once, very quietly, says, Good lad, you nearly combust, because Fig does not give compliments. He gives practical critiques, sighs, and sometimes biscuits, if he forgets they're in his pocket. but never praise. And then, on a Tuesday, your life changes forever. Two people arrive at dusk. A tall man in a long ink-black coat with leather gloves and a quiet gait, and a shorter woman in blue overalls with pockets full of pencils and small gears. They don't talk much, just circle you, nod, scribble something. Then she looks at you, really looks, and says, "You ready, Captain Still?" You've never felt more ready for anything in your life. It takes 2 days of preparation. Fig insists on wrapping your limbs in layers of soft cloth. Leighton makes tea for everyone and pretends not to cry. The corset mannequin hums continuously, possibly for emotional support. Even Buttons gets a tiny traveling scarf. And then, just as the first pink blossoms open outside the tailor shop, they take you away. You are lifted carefully into a box that smells of cedar and lavender and some deep magic that only old mannequins understand. Buttons tucks into your coat like a stowaway. The box closes, and for the first time in decades, you move. You expect darkness, stillness, maybe the quiet dread of being sealed away again, like that long-forgotten trunk in Benlow's attic. But no, this is different. Your box has tiny slits, carefully cut, through which sunlight peeks and scent drifts. Flowers, engine smoke, bakeries, warm pavement. It's a carousel of sensation you've never known, and even though you're just wax and wire, you feel it. The box hums softly, not with mannequins this time, but with motion. Carriage wheels? No, too smooth. A train? Maybe. Buttons calls it the belly of the future, though his grasp on transportation is fuzzy at best. You pass time the way you always have, by listening. The clinks and creaks, the soft voice of the woman with the pencils. He's not just a mannequin, he's a mood. You wish you could thank her, you wish you could bow, but mostly you wait. Then, one afternoon, or is it morning? The motion stops, the box opens, and the world floods in. Light, noise, color. You're not in a shop. You're not in a storage room. You are on a platform, and in front of you, a space so vast, so dizzyingly filled with beams, banners, mirrors, people. It might be heaven, but it's labeled Museum of Emotional History, whatever that is. The tall man gestures toward a pedestal. She goes here. Leighton's voice rings in your memory. He's a he. The man shrugs. They go here, then. Better. You are lifted again. Gently, reverently. You are placed on the platform, and for the first time, you are not behind glass. You are part of the exhibit. Buttons climbs onto your shoulder and stays there, tail wrapped around your collar, like a medal. The placard at your feet reads, "The Gentleman in the Window," an unmoving witness to century-turned fashion, public grief, and small acts of joy. Visitors approach slowly. Children wave. Someone draws your silhouette in a notebook titled "Things That Didn't Give Up." You're not even embarrassed. A woman whispers, "He looks like he's about to wink." You don't. But she's not entirely wrong, because something has shifted inside you, something gentle and rooted and proud. You aren't a mannequin anymore. You're a memory, a shared memory, and people don't throw those away. The museum becomes your new window. People stream by each day, fewer in the morning, a flood by late afternoon. They pause, they peer, they whisper, they laugh sometimes at buttons in his ridiculous scarf. A few cry, not big tears, just the kind that leak out when your soul bumps into something it didn't expect to feel on a Tuesday. You're surrounded now, not by mannequins, but exhibits. To your left, a phonograph that once sang to soldiers in trenches. To your right, a pair of spectacles with a note. These saw the Queen trip in 1937, and across the hall, a dress, stitched with golden thread and lined with heartbreak. The tag reads, "Worn on a day she almost didn't leave the house." This isn't a museum of facts. It's a museum of feelings, and you're Exhibit C, but you might as well be the heart of the place. Visitors point. They tell stories about their own clothes, their own routines, the coats they wore through breakups and snowstorms. They say, "My granddad had one just like that." They say, "This reminds me of home." A boy with freckles asks if you're magic. His mom says, "No, sweetie, just old." She's wrong. You're both. Some people leave you gifts. A paper flower, a button badge, a copy of a poem that starts, "The wax man watches." You've never been read poetry before. And then, unexpectedly, Fig visits. He's older, hair whiter, slower on his feet, but he's wearing your waistcoat, not exactly yours. A version of it, slightly looser in the midsection, more forgiving in the seams, but unmistakable. And when he sees you, he salutes. An actual salute, like you're royalty or a traffic officer he vaguely respects. "Still standing, eh?" he says. "You are." He pats the placard. "Could have used a better photo." Then he leans in, lowers his voice. "You outlived me shop. They turned it into a juice bar. You want to mourn it." But Fig smiles. "Don't worry. I snuck your scarf out before they tossed anything. Gave it to Leighton. He sewed it into a quilt. A quilt, a patch of your past, stitched into something warm. Buttons curls tighter on your shoulder. And the corset mannequin, wherever she is now, would surely be proud." Fig stays a while, just sitting, drinking tea from a thermos. People pass him, assuming he's part of the exhibit too. Maybe he is. He chuckles at that thought, and when he finally stands, he says, "Good lad, same as before." And you still don't melt. You become iconic, not overnight, not in any viral, trumpet-blaring way, but gradually, like moss overtaking a stone. One post leads to another. Someone draws a comic about you, the wax man who waited. A teenager films a 10-second video that ends with your face and the words, "He still stands." People duet it with songs about stillness, hope, heartbreak. You don't move, of course, but online, you are dancing. There's a rumor that if you look into your eyes long enough, you'll remember something you forgot. Your grandmother's laugh, the smell of your father's coat, how it felt to be 10 and invincible. You're not sure it's true, but you like that people believe it. Buttons insists he should have his own profile. He claims he's the emotional core of the exhibit. You let him have the spotlight now and then. He deserves it. Museum staff come and go. Some dust you with reverence. Others accidentally knock your elbow and panic like they've shattered the Mona Lisa. One time, a child licks your shoe. That's less poetic. Still, the museum gives you a nameplate, now, proper, carved brass, 3 words. Captain still underneath, witness, symbol, stayer. You didn't ask for those words, but they feel like yours. Some people leave you confessions now, folded bits of paper tucked behind your heels. Secrets, wishes, regrets. You read none of them, but you hold them, and somehow, that's enough. You're told there's going to be a book, a small one, children's size, illustrated. It's called The Gentleman in the Window. You're nervous. Buttons is thrilled. He suggests a plush line. The publisher laughs. The exhibit expands slightly. They add your old display case in the corner, your original coat, your first scarf, one of Fig's crooked tailor pins. Visitors trail their fingers along the glass like it's hallowed, like you're a miracle. You aren't, but miracles aren't always flashy. Sometimes they're just things that don't disappear when they're supposed to. And that's you, still here, still standing, still somehow becoming. Years pass, quietly, as they do. Seasons trade places across the windows. Trends bloom and die. The museum switches logos. The tea shop across the street changes owners twice. But you remain, not unchanged. The velvet of your coat grows duskier. The brass of your buttons darkens to antique. Buttons himself gets a little frayed around the tail and starts insisting on more naps. You both startle fewer children and soothe more adults. One day, a young museum intern forgets to turn off the display light. You glow through the night, dim and golden, like a lighthouse with no sea. Someone posts a photo the next morning with the caption, "Still watching, still warm." It gets 50,000 shares. A few people even come just to see you at closing time, whispering goodnight through the glass. One leaves a thermos of hot cocoa at your feet. Another, a knitted sock with a note. "I didn't forget this time." You don't know what it means, but you keep it. A museum manager suggests moving you to a new exhibit 1 year. Something interactive, digital, trendy. There's an uproar, not from the mannequins, from people. Online petitions, handmade protest, signs, even a rather aggressive haiku. Move him, and we riot. Buttons knows all our secrets. Wax stays where wax wants. The museum backtracks. They polish your platform instead and add a bench nearby. Visitors call it the still spot. They sit there to think, to breathe, to remember the sound of their mother zipping up a winter coat, to wonder if anyone still owns a thimble, to feel something that doesn't need a touch screen or swipe. You become a kind of anchor, not flashy, but vital. A little girl presses her hand to the glass one day and says, "I want to be like him when I grow up." Her dad chuckles. "Still?" "No," she says. "Kind. And buttons?" He purrs. Yes, he actually purrs. You're not sure how, but maybe kindness teaches us all new things, even tiny wax mice. Time, at some point, stops feeling like time. It becomes texture, soft around the edges, worn in the middle, familiar like an old waistcoat that fits just right in the shoulders. You no longer track years by the calendar, but by the coats people wear, the color of the museum's brochures, the way children's drawings of you evolve from stick figures to detailed portraits with shading and flair. You become a kind of bedtime story. Teachers bring school children who whisper, "That's Captain Still," not like they're meeting a mannequin, but like they're visiting an ancestor. One of them leaves a thank you note with glitter and grape juice stains that reads, "Thank you for being still when I felt wobbly." You keep that one, folded behind your collar. Buttons is older now, grayer. His scarf is more patch than fabric, and his favorite activity is simply napping in the warmth of the afternoon light. The corset mannequin was eventually relocated, but sometimes, on particularly quiet nights, you swear you hear her humming from across the hall. Even now, she keeps tempo. Fig visits less often, but when he does, he brings a biscuit, wipes a smudge from your lapel, and says, "Still the best dressed one in here." You believe him. The museum staff changed too, but one thing remains. Every single one, interns, curators, janitors, calls you by name. They nod in your direction when they pass. A small ritual of respect. Some even sit by the still spot bench and tell you about their breakups, dreams, doubts, as if your silence makes you trustworthy. And maybe it does. After all, you've heard everything, but you've never repeated a word. And now, there's a new addition, not to the museum, to you, a child mannequin, smaller than buttons, stitched with care, wearing a lopsided bow tie and a tag that reads, "Hope." He's been placed beside you, not on display, yet just sitting, waiting. One of the curators says, "Thought you could use company, someone to carry on." You don't move, but something flickers behind your stillness, something soft, and in that moment you understand. You were never just a figure in a window. You were a vessel, a lighthouse, a mirror, and now a mentor. Hope looks up at you with button eyes and the unspoken question every child asks of their elder, "Will I be okay?" And though you can't speak, your presence answers, "Yes, yes, you will." And so, the museum dims its lights for the night. The visitors go home. The bench is empty, but you remain taller now somehow, wiser, and quietly eternal. The museum quiets, and the air softens. Even the floorboards seem to sigh. Somewhere, a custodian turns off the last lamp. Outside, the street lamps hum faintly, casting long, sleepy shadows across the tiled floor. You stand as you always have, still calm, steady, but the world no longer rushes past you. It leans in, listens, breathes with you. Hope nestles closer to your side. Buttons twitches once in his sleep, and then relaxes again, his tiny heartbeat syncing with the distant tick of an unseen clock. And slowly, gently, the city outside exhales. Fog creeps along the windows. A hush drapes over rooftops. The night wraps around the museum like a blanket. You do not blink. You do not sway. But your stillness hums with something warm, something ancient, something safe. If someone were to enter now, if they crept through the dark just to catch one last glimpse, they would find you there, unmoving, but undeniably alive. And in that perfect stillness, they might feel less alone. So rest easy now. Let the weight of the day slide away like dust from a velvet collar. Let your mind quiet. Let your breath slow. Captain Still is watching the night for you, and nothing bad ever gets past him. Sweet dreams.